You've got a copy of the agenda, so first thing on the agenda is what? Oh, there it is. Review agenda for addition, removal, or adjustments. Does anybody have anything they want to add, remove, or adjust? Nope. No. Moving right along. Public forum. Are there any members of the public who'd like to weigh in? It appears not. Okay. Regular business. August meeting notes. So we sent those out right after August. Does anybody want to make a comment on that?
If it's going in some record, I just assume that Betsy was spelled B-E-T-S-Y.
Okay. What, did it have an E in it?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Betsy has no E.
Well, it has one.
Okay,
It's one
not,
E, but
only
not-
one E. Okay, right. We'll make sure it has one vowel.
But let's have it be toward the beginning.
Okay, let's call for a vowel.
So that's where it's,
Got it. Yep. Twice in that paragraph.
oh, there it goes.
Yep. Okay. Who has those? Do you have those?
The meeting notes?
Yeah. I mean, then they're there, but
And they're on the website too, I believe.
They were emailed.
Yeah,
yeah,
email,
but I'm
and
just
I
saying,
put,
can we how do we fix that? Take the
once they're corrected, that's the only correction we have is, I'll fix that.
yeah, thank you.
Now I followed your question.
What's that?
Now
Yeah,
I-
okay. Okay, are there any other changes, corrections?
Click from here.
Do we have to make a motion and vote it really? All right, let's hear it.
Make a motion to accept them as presented or as amended.
Okay,
Second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so collecting ideas, spaghetti dinner. Let's see, do you want to talk about that since you were there?
Oh, I was not there, so I would
I know,
love to hear.
yeah,
where
Mike
you-
was there.
where you-
Oh, Mike, you were there too.
well,
But I also have.
I
the
wanted
notes.
to commend you on your leading of that group, because you do very well at that,
Thank you.
managing people that you need to cut off. So you did really well. I don't know how many people came, maybe 35,
About 20.
20?
Is what they're doing.
I think maybe
20 adults.
20
and a
adults,
bunch of-
maybe
Yeah,
yeah, somewhere in that.
How many families do that represent?
Say maybe
So that's just
six,
like one person.
but there were actually, were there really only 20 adults there because there were.
I
I
think-
sent you the photos of
Okay.
and the meeting. Did you have a chance to look at those?
I did, thank
I
you.
had between adults and children about 25 RSVPs online.
Mhm,
And like 18 of those were adults, if
mhm.
I remember right in my head.
But the photos in the meeting room,
Yeah,
if you could count the heads.
okay,
I counted about 20.
Okay.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so.
It
between-
went very nicely. Allison did a fantastic job
She
organizing
did,
that. Boy, that was
actually,
a lot of
yeah,
work.
A round of applause for that.
Yeah. We had way too much food, but I'm sure it got used.
Yeah,
So
the-
potluck people were gonna use it the next day.
Exactly. Bertha was not concerned by it by any means.
Good.
And
Yeah.
I submitted their pay request today to Anthony, so it's all done.
And I think people asked great questions. I wasn't there for that whole discussion, but I think you took notes on that, right? People had real opinions and there's a woman who wants the outdoor pool built.
Don't laugh, that shows up a lot.
It does show up a lot.
It does?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
funny
think
that
it's
I
crazy.
resisted commenting on all of the other ones, but I couldn't resist for some reason, and I didn't hear the outdoor pool. I heard just pool.
Oh.
So we didn't align.
Right,
Yeah.
So she got a little defensive.
It's one of those where instead of building yet another pool, it's like, how do we better utilize the existing one that
Exactly.
sits idle all summer?
right, a lot
I
of
guess
time.
that's what crossed my mind.
Yeah, so,
I think because it's indoors.
yeah, well, that and
It's
it's
not
to go
staffed,
outdoors.
but it's not staffed,
not
it's
And
not
you
like,
have to provide your own life.
lifeguard and scheduling with the school and janitorial and blah. So if somebody could take that on, I think we'd get a ton of use, especially in those hot summer days, people just looking for water, they don't care. Matter of fact, a lot of people won't be in the sun anyways, they just want water.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I agree. I've seen it at least a half a dozen or a dozen times.
Well, she wrote it several times. so-
I'm saying on the
no, it was on
cards.
postcards from the library,
Oh,
somebody
right.
said it at the, yeah. I was amazed again that, childcare and housing were the first things out of people's mouths.
Yeah, I
Very
know.
first things out of their mouths every single time. Don't know what we're gonna do about that, but it's just worth noting.
And it's a tough nut to crack because honestly, $1 million doesn't fix either one of those. That's the saddest part about that.
Right.
Yeah, but it's,
But other programs can.
Exactly, and I look at like the affordable housing, passing that information on to the planning commission, which I was in their last meeting. And they're actually just starting a bylaw modernization project, and the biggest focus is housing.
Density and.
Yeah,
good.
and so Adam from Addison County Regional Planning, who's helping them with that, would love to get the raw data when we get it. Like how many, what percentage of people talked about housing in general, how many was affordable housing?
Yeah.
And what were some of the ideas, because he'd love to start to figure out how to wrap that into their planning session. So it's not wasted data.
no, it's definitely not. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I thought the spaghetti dinner went really well. It was a great community effort that sort of mimics the focus groups. We got some good feedback, which fell into line with a lot of the other feedback we've had.
Did you bring the big post-it things? Not tonight, but I mean, you have them?
It's,
I had them, and then that went into making
Oh,
this
okay.
document.
Okay,
So
great.
all of the comments that were put on those post-its on the. around
Really?
that.
The pool, it's on that one?
Yep.
I just
Yeah.
read
it's
that.
under outdoor spaces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I tried to summarize as best we could.
Yeah.
The range of comments, and then highlight sort of the two areas where discussion sort of coalesced, which was around issues of affordable housing and childcare. And then there was quite a lot of discussion about sort of a multi-use facility in terms of a more practical application. With people revisiting that throughout the discussion and adding on or suggesting other possibilities.
And that was where I really had to bite my tongue because I was struggling because when Meredith first came on board as rec director, that was one among her first tasks was to work with me on finding a location for community center. As you know, we've had this conversation. And the town, the select board was seriously considering buying property next to the rec fields to tear the building down. And we hired a design team to develop a community center concept plan for that property. It didn't quite fit. And of course, the price tag and everything else. So that got put on the shelf for now. But the idea is still very alive and well.
So in my, Betsy's good.
Yeah, I have a question about community center. All of those red buildings over there.
Or on the rec field?
No, not the rec field, where Mountain Health and.
Oh, and that little,
Bristol Works.
yeah.
I gather that's gonna get sold, right? And.
Yeah, pieces of that are being sold.
Right, so I was thinking that if the town could acquire that and then just one building at a time, you know, like you maybe have one that's for childcare and that kind of stuff. And then eventually you do one for the police, they want to have a decent place, and maybe one for counseling services. I mean, if you did it one piece at a time, and if you did it like a college, and you say, okay, who is it that has deep pockets who would like to do, I mean, why is it because of Christmas that this Holly Hall? Or was there somebody named Holly?
Wasn't there a Mr. Holly?
There was.
And he probably had a lot of money.
Yeah,
And that money is probably in this building.
Yeah.
And so, the weather is changing.
Right. Find a
And,
benefit
and
here.
there are going to be some people coming from California and those places who may have a lot of assets, who would like to be welcomed into the community and would happily have a building, one portion, because like at a university, my uncle who had helped run the University of Maryland, his name went on one side of a building and then somebody else's name on the other side of the building. I mean, You know, I mean, how expensive is a sign?
About $1 million per building.
So I'm thinking,
At least.
you know, that if we didn't think in terms of, oh gee, $1.1 million isn't going to renovate, an acre of buildings, you know, but if we, you know, really looked at it,
At
and
the
then
moment-
you do each of the buildings as a different usage, then there may be funding for that particular usage.
I believe that, complex is fully occupied right now.
Yeah, but I think that the owner is thinking to get out of it, so it's.
But selling the properties to the occupants.
Yes.
So condominiumizing it and selling them to the current tenants. But I
Couldn't we ask and find out?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I looked at when a lot of these popped up, like, some of the ideas that have come in, again, I just happened to see almost all the cards that have come through. Things like when it comes to the childcare aspect, we have a childcare center in our community that needs upgrading. And why reinvent the wheel when we already have, they have the staffing, they have the infrastructure, they just need dollars to be able to do their upgrade. The Masonic Lodge, the folks that run that really would like to increase their offerings to seniors. The problem with their building is it's not ADA compliant and you can't get up and down the stairs. So how they put in they put in for a lift/elevator as a possible. So
Those don't cost much when you talk about $1 million. Did they put in a price? 'Cause
And
I asked them to put in a quote.
I don't remember, I'd have to look at that. I've looked at
I wanna say
literally
they talked
hundreds
about
of these.
80,000, you know, they
It-
don't,
it-
it's not that
so-
much.
so- Utilizing existing things
Mhm.
and maximizing those
Mhm.
first, and then if each one of those takes off, we then have done proof of concept that maybe then you start to bring them all together into one house. My concern is you build the big house and you can't fill it. When we looked at building that 20 years ago over at the rec field, over at the ice rink, that was one of the biggest things that stopped that in its tracks. We couldn't fill the remaining space to be able to keep the funding going, to keep it going. So,
The other thing that I would add to that is that many of the things that people reference wanting to have happen in a community space are happening in the community. And if we put them in a central, I think what people visualize when they say a community center is a building that is municipally run, that provides all of these services, municipally funded. And we're not really in a position to do that. And one of the things that we've talked about on this committee is not building something that's going to be an ongoing expense or add additional budget items. And I think that when we hear this idea of a community center, what I want to do is ask people what they feel they need and what is missing, and then let that give us a guide to how we can try to educate or funnel or promote or support or create cross collaborations to connect people with the services that they need or that they're interested in. And, you know, if there's any money spent, I see it more in spent in that, supporting what's already happening by the various nonprofits that are funded elsewise or the different groups or organizations. So I hear people wanting there to be something, but I'm not sure that it always means that the service that they're seeking doesn't exist. It may not be obvious to them or accessible to them or convenient to them, but I'm not sure that building a center is what's really, I don't know that that's really the need.
I mean, I look at Plattsburgh right now is going through a huge conundrum over the Craig Civic Center, which has been there forever. And it currently now houses some sports programs and I think a small. The building is deteriorating. They're thinking about abandoning it, tearing it down, and because all those services are handled elsewhere in the city. And that's one of my fears of building a large building is what happened in 20 years? I mean, what's the upkeep? How do we do that? And can we fund it?
Right. That's my biggest thing. Like, how are we going to fund this in an ongoing way? And I think that people don't think about the idea, like if the municipality builds a community center, then somebody's going to have to pay for that maintenance, upkeep, and staffing to provide all the services people think should be in that center. And that, you know, then they don't want us to raise their taxes. well, where's that money coming from? So, and I think a lot of these services are provided. So I think that, like we were saying earlier, these are all so many really good ideas. And the question for us is to look at those ideas and identify which of them are ideal for our ARPA money and which are ideas that we need to take back to the community and say, look at this great idea. Clearly, people are needing more funneling, directing. Who is that going to be? Who's going to help promote that, et cetera. So, but for our agenda, yeah, I'll come to you in a minute, but the agenda item for this piece here is just to talk about sort of the process of collecting ideas, and that we're wrapping that up as we come down. The spaghetti supper was sort of our last big public thing. We have collected the boxes from the library and the town office. The website is still up. Chris was suggesting maybe we do one more push. Somebody on the committee send a thing out saying, we'd love to get your ideas, send them to the website. If you have any, we're going to shut that down at the end of the week. And then after that, if anybody has a burning idea or brilliant inspiration, of course, they can always send it to the town office like they did before we had the postcards, et cetera. But that will allow us to sort of stop actively receiving and begin actively managing the data.
And we can create go from a survey to a comment link on the website that isn't specifically calling out, it's just comment. If somebody happens to want to go there and go through that, we're not broadcasting it, but it would be, if somebody's really burning desire, they find a way to do it.
Sure, it's great.
It'd be simple to
Does
do.
anybody want to do that last push on the front push forum? And
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
thank you.
And so you want it by the end of,
Well, but probably tomorrow, so folks have time.
well, post it tomorrow,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and just say, you know,
that's Wednesday.
yeah, just say we're wrapping up our active data collection process.
Actually, I'll pull it down Monday morning, the weekend.
Okay.
All right,
Um,
so I'll say Sunday.
Yep, please, yep.
Okay,
by Sunday.
Okay.
And again, you can use language saying like active data collection process. And, you know, you don't even have to say we're taking it down after Sunday. You can just say, please send us your ideas via this web link by Sunday.
This is our last big push. We want your ideas.
Yeah.
okay.
Betsy, you wanted to add something?
Well, I was thinking about the thrust of the sort of public-private, you know, the kinds of things that people want are sprinkled out there in the community. And some people know where they are,
Right.
but certainly people that are new to the community, they have no idea where any of these are. And so maybe we could put a little bit of money into getting one of those silly cartoon maps that a lot of towns have that, you know, kind of has a picture of what the building looks like
Yeah.
and where it is, where the parking is for it. And then on the backside, you know, here's where you go for this kind of recreation, here you go with this, you know, and have that assembled as a package rather than did you happen to look on Front Porch Forum on the right day, you know, and see what it was that you wanted. I mean, yes, you can come here to get stuff for the rec department. That's assuming that you know there is a rec department.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, it seems like there should be something that's better for people that aren't old timers.
It's funny that Resort Maps, the company that makes those maps, is in Waitsfield.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Ah,
Yeah.
the green ones that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the comical
Yeah.
things, yeah.
they're helpful, actually.
Yeah, I like
them
them
a lot.
I see them everywhere.
So to your point, Betsy, last year, Meredith McFarland, the rec director, and I launched a random volunteer, spontaneous and uncoordinated effort to deliver packets to new residents, giving them a whole bunch of literature about organizations in the community that provide resources and services to Bristol residents. And also, by the way, these are places where new residents could volunteer if they want to get involved in the community. So we printed up little bags that have the Holly Hall logo on one side and the Bristol Trail Network logo with the Bristol, Vermont, best period town period ever motto on the back. And, you know, there's nothing about businesses in there, only services and nonprofits, except garbage, because that's, we asked Sharon, the town clerk, what the questions were that new residents have, and she said, there's really only two. What am I supposed to do with my trash? And where's that trail? So we have information in there about that, but it's an uncoordinated effort and we'd be happy to receive money for it, because we just wing it. So anyway. All right, next on the agenda. That's right, I'm happy to have somebody else just tell me what we're doing. Okay, discussion of data entry and coding of ideas. So now we have a whole bunch of ideas. We don't even know how many, but really, truly a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Few hundred, if not more.
Well, I'm looking forward to looking them all.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty cool.
So the next step is to take all of this data and get it into something that we can then manipulate and manage. And so Jessica Teets and her class at Middlebury College on methods in data are going to help us with this, and it's a two-phase process. So Betsy and I met with Jessica last week to talk about that process, because Betsy had done the first showing us ways that that might happen after the dump postcard collection. And so do you want to put up the little document that I sent you? So this is sort of a document that kind of is going to show us how we're going to go here. So this is a little thing I put up about coding and categorizing the ARPA ideas and submissions. Is that Sharon? Okay,
Yes.
so Jessica and her class, after today's meeting, if we're ready to move forward, will take all of the data and enter it into a document with two categories of codes. So when they enter it in the document, the first category of codes will show where it came from. So we'll know if it was,
Assuming we know,
what's that?
assuming we know. You mean like suggestion box or spaghetti dinner?
No,
That kind of
An
thing?
actual application.
no,
No.
there's four categories of where things come from. Some things were direct submissions to the
Oh,
town.
those are the sources.
Yeah,
I see.
okay, direct submissions to the town, the things that came to you in letter
Yeah.
or voice and ended up on the matrix. The second is ideas that came out of the focus group and the spaghetti dinner. The third is postcards. So we're not
Mhm.
coding where the postcard came from, just postcards.
Right.
And then the fourth is the web survey.
Mhm.
So those are our four main sources of input coming in. And then they will also code the topic or category. So we have a list of examples here, which are mostly built on the note cards that Betsy categorized. But we can talk about this a little bit today and see if we want to add to it or make changes.
Or give them the freedom. They're the ones looking at all the cards.
That's
To
true. And
realize
Jessica can
there's a
speak
whole
to that
section.
as well. So I'll finish this and then she can weigh in if that's all right with you, Jessica. So, but the ones that have been somewhat obvious are housing, childcare, transportation, services other than childcare and transportation, infrastructure other than housing, and those might be subcategories. So sidewalks, downtown, library, water, sewer. There's a category for sort of health, sanitation, or food security, category for recreation, one for environment, sustainability, tax abatement, which is the people who said, just give us the money, please. So those are the categories. Yeah, a fair number of people said that, which, you know, I get it.
Like
Interesting.
take it off the property.
Yeah, they're like, it was government money in the first place and just give it back to us.
What's an
And-
example of the health, sanitation, and food security?
Food security, I would say like the food shelf.
Okay.
Well, there was, one of the people that I was handing out a postcard. And she was very frail. I said, it would be nice if there was more food available. And I said,
Oh.
well, there's the food pantry. And she said, well, but that's not very often.
Right.
You know, and she looked like somebody, she was driving a car, but she,
That's a sad
she
story.
looked very,
Right, and but that's to the point we were talking about before. If you need food at any time in the month, if you contact the food shelf, they will get you food.
And,
And-
yeah, and instead just actually just bumping up in the round program, easier way to access.
Right,
and-
but people need
Yeah.
to know that.
yes, how do you
So-
know? I mean,
Yeah.
this is the first I've ever heard it, so.
Yeah, if all you have to do is contact them. How do you do that though, if you don't know?
Yeah.
But some of the other things that came in at the dump were trash and recycling twice weekly. So some people felt like that was an important service. Again, you can hire a trash hauler to come more than if you want. Affordable gas and food prices. So it's vague, but you know, that was something they said. Mental health services
Yeah.
locally, and dental care for those without insurance or access. Again, that's available through Mountain Health, but obviously this person didn't realize that.
So that's the kind of stuff that needs to be, like with the map of where things are, is what kinds of services that exist.
Exactly.
So another one under sanitation that popped up, often but not, was, composting and or yard waste, disposal at the old landfill location.
Right.
Mhm.
Like yard waste or food.
It's impossible to do, but that's irrelevant.
Wait a minute, but yard waste, I think that the, people who are contracted to take our trash
They will.
should be doing yard waste consistently.
Yeah.
I've had this discussion with them many times, and they always say, oh, well, first they said, you know, people were putting trash into the dumpster that we left here. I said,
Okay.
okay, why don't you lock it? Put a sign on it, do something. Then they said, well, it's too expensive, we don't make enough money off that. I think it should be part of their contract, because I don't like having to drive to Middlebury to get rid of my yard waste. You know?
And that, so that was one of them that came up,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so,
Or contracting a third party that does it outside of our now. There's all sorts of options, but that was one that happened to pop up was the composting and yard waste. I saw
so the composting, is that different from the green pails?
well, they feel that it shouldn't.
That they should be able to take it, you know, that should happen here.
Right.
Like at
that
the
we should
dump,
just be
so that then,
theirs.
and what
So
some
they
person
do
said,
take it at the dump for $2.
Well, no,
but
no.
then, but they would happen at the dump, get composted, so that then they could go back and.
Come
do
back
the
into the compost itself,
I see.
and just having run that facility for years,
Me too,
that's not as
Okay.
easy, as
Mhm.
nice as people think it is. It's icky.
yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
but
so
back to, yeah.
topics. So, I'm wondering
Oh.
if, as a group, we feel like this is a good starting place for the topics.
Where
Um,
did the elevator for the green church fall?
let's see, that would be infrastructure.
Or services other than childcare and transport, because that's so that towards senior services.
Well, and see, Betsy, that's a place that they could put a plaque in on that lift, on the elevator that says, this was purchased by ARPA funds in 2022 or something. You know, they can do something.
Or this is,
Yeah.
was purchased by, Sam Smedley, you
Yeah,
know, or
yeah.
whatever.
So I'm adding under services, like under infrastructure, we have some specifics. Under services, I'm adding mental health and senior services as specifics.
You know, isn't there a CSAP office on Mountain View Street?
I don't think it's there anymore.
No, it's
No, I
not.
think somebody else.
Somebody's
there's
over there.
There's a
Somebody-
law
something's
firm.
over there.
A law firm.
There's a law firm and chocolate.
I think.
Jessica, do you have anything else you want to weigh in? So, you know, basically, we're giving them this, we'll give them all the data and they'll code it. So we'll have a single document that will have all of the thoughts and ideas in it, and we'll be able to sort it with, you know, where it came from if we want to, what the category is if we want to. Some things will be coded multiple times, right? So, you know, it might have several codes. If it's, you know, electric buses, that might be senior services and transportation and sustainability, you know, so we've got multiple codes. And then we'll have a way to look at it, and we can start beginning that looking at it at our October meeting.
So they won't be making judgments as to this is ridiculous. They're just gonna
Nope.
find a place to put it.
Everything goes in. Jessica,
Right.
what else should we know?
So we can take the codes that you have in this document and we'll put them on the first page so that people can refer to them to make sure that they understand what they are. And then what we'll do is the first two columns in the Excel sheet, you know, we'll title them source and category, and then we'll use these codes. So we'll give them numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then you can sort them that way. So like if you want to see all the transportation requests all together, you can sort that column, you know, just by the number. It will group them all together. And then as you all decide how you want to rank your choices, you'll be able to put those in a column too, and then rank them again later so you can see what your highest scores are all the way down to your lowest. And hopefully then it will be really easy for us to see, if everybody is the same top 3 or something like that, that would be really easy then to share with the select board. And, for the rest of them that you don't necessarily have agreement on, that's where you'll have to discuss it.
Will there be consolidation of some of these multiples, or will there be each entry will be in there no matter how many times it was suggested or slightly differently it was suggested?
I was planning on just doing straight data entry. So, right, like if it came in on a postcard, but it was also mentioned in a focus group, it would show up more than once. If you wanted me not to do duplicates, I could definitely take them out. I don't know if they're useful for your purposes. Like if you want to see that the same ideas coming in a lot, and then I can just leave them in there.
I think it's very
would
important
like
that you
to
see
see that.
Yeah.
how one suggestion got, because if you take away how many people suggested the same thing, it kind of defeats the trying to gather what the town wants,
Right. So then this would just be straight data entry. And the only thing I would be adding would be the source code and the category code, just so that you can start to group things together for your own analysis. And you wouldn't have to use those. It's just if you wanted to see all the housing requests or all the childcare requests together, then it would help you group them.
I'm wondering if there would, when you're talking about putting in an elevator in the Masonic Lodge, it doesn't leap to my mind that would be infrastructure.
No,
And so
it's
I'm
not.
wondering if there could be a category for getting buildings into compliance.
Right. I mean, that one you could put it under infrastructure, but I would probably put it under the intended purpose, like at the elevators for elder care. I would think that category would be more appropriate for it. I guess infrastructure, like the things that are listed, the requests about what the water system or the sewer system or sidewalks or things like that is probably what I
That
would
seems to be governmental to me when you're talking infrastructure. And if we're talking about having services out in basically private places that we would be participating with, then I think there needs to be sort of a public-private category.
Well, I think that's what she was getting at. The infrastructure that would not fall under, that would fall under more senior services.
Right.
To me, that's how that would fall versus an infrastructure, which again, senior services is a
Okay.
broad spectrum, everything from private to nonprofit
Okay.
to one-offs.
All right.
Well, I think to Betsy's point, it may be worth having a private sort of category as opposed to a municipal all this other stuff is potentially municipal, but for private donations of that sort, it may warrant having a separate category.
And I could definitely add that in. So there could be source, there could be topic or category, and then there could be maybe authority, if that's what you wanted to call it. So is it the town? Is it private? Is it a public-private partnership?
I don't think it needs to be a new column. It just needs to be a new subject under topics and categories.
Right.
I don't know though if you would want to divide it out that way, because then it would mean that the person who's the authority would trump the type of project. So it could be a housing project or a childcare project, but we wouldn't be comparing them together depending on who was funding them. And that's probably.
I want to ask the question, what is our intended use for that data? So I
Right.
think the purpose for this exercise for us is firstly, we want to have all of the submissions in a single location so that we can see them. Secondly, we want to be able to manipulate them in a couple of meaningful ways. And the reason that these categories, I think, percolated after the dump sort is because they were the ones that reflected the things that people had to share with us. And so that's why they became a category, if you will. We are going to see all the data. So these codes are not going to be hidden in the document. And so if, for example, we're reading through the document as a group or as individuals, and we see something and we think, that's not the way I would have coded that, then we can have that conversation. And if it's important for us as a group to change the code, we can, or we can say, I might not have coded it that way, but it doesn't really matter. As long as I can see it, you know, it's still here. So I don't feel like if I saw that, you know, using the elevator at the Masonic Hall and it got coded as senior services, that would be fine for me. And I wouldn't need it to have another code. I think it would do what we needed it to do, is get it so we can see it.
And we might, as a group, break those down later. If
Exactly. You can
if-
see there's a whole nother step. So this is only the very first step. We've got at least 2 more phases.
These other
Are
pieces-
we gonna have the resources of Jessica's class after this phase, or is this our one shot to get this additional help? Because it may be worth taking the extra step now.
You will have them on an ongoing basis for the rest of the semester.
Yay.
What's the duration of the semester?
Till December, well, actually, the week after December 12th is finals week. So through that, right before Christmas.
But luckily the professor still lives in town after Christmas, so she'll have access to the data.
And I can't get away, right? So I'm here.
So the only other piece that, as I've looked through the data again, both the web submission, that it feels like there's 2 very distinct types of submission. There's theory and there's project, for lack of better terms. There's like, and is that something we should break down after the fact? And let's just get these 2 first categories into the general for now. And then we can go through as a group maybe and be like, childcare is really a theory. It's in.
But using that example, childcare is a theory, but Willowell came to us with a project.
Yes.
So I do think that's something that we look at a little bit farther down the road. So in terms of phasing, I think the first phase for us as a group is we want to get all this data together and just start to digest it some. And I think that's what we'll do on October 3rd.
Okay.
And then, you know, we'll talk about that a little bit more October 3rd and be like, okay, where are we going next? And so the next sort of layer of filters that we could apply to the data, you know, externally by code, or we could apply to it in a more subjective way, each individually with a ranking, is this idea of our committee goals or philosophies that we had said, like, we want to serve the broadest number of residents. We want to invest, but not have something be an ongoing expenditure if possible. We don't want to spend money on something that's already in the budget or that there's already other funds for if we can avoid it. And we talked about wanting to leverage or attract additional funds to Bristol. And so one exercise that we could do after we looked at the data and decided that, you know, it's good as is and we're ready to now start manipulating it, is we could all go have homework. And we could take that data with us physically in paper or, you know, access it on the computer. And for every line there, we can say, okay, what do I think the ranking is? Do I think this serves the broadest number of residents? Yes, strongly, that's a 5, or straight up, that's a 0. Okay, and so each one of us could do this ranking with each of those things. But I think that whether we do that with all 600 ideas, or if we want to take all those ideas, narrow it down a little bit, and
Distill
then
it, yeah.
and then apply that ranking to a slightly smaller one of it. And
The latter.
How can we rank things as we're going through them? It seems you won't know which are the most important until you've gone through them and seen what they all are. And
right,
then
exactly.
you
That's what I'm saying. We want to see them all first. That's what
Right,
we'll hope to
right.
do
So
early in
not
October.
do the ranking, and I wouldn't think even give extra points to an actual proposal until we have figured out, okay, this is an area we want to address, and here are the possibilities of addressing it. And look, this one has a proposal.
Yeah.
Just on the data, Ian, you got his hand up.
Ian?
That's okay. You can go, Chris. I can go after you.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. I was just wondering, so I know that one of your ideals that you're looking at is helping as many people as possible. But I feel that that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And I didn't know if you had given any thought to breaking down the makeup of Bristol's residents and seeing if you can divide and find sort of common areas. I mean, in terms of you could do it by age or things like that. You know, I think of like the library project. I think that's a very good project. They want to build something behind the library that would suit, you know, a lot of the children in the area, a lot of adults as well, but it may not, you know, benefit everyone. Is there a way to be able to get more like a breakdown of people of residents, then you could sort of match and say, oh, look, we are helping people with this project. We are helping this kind of person with this project.
That's an interesting question, and it makes me think of something that Betsy brought up last week about, you know, there is a desire to serve the broadest number of residents, but that also might be a consideration to try to look for serving, you know, the most needy residents or the residents who were most affected by COVID as well, right? Am I saying that?
and just disenfranchised in any of a number of different ways, because a lot of the people who are most in need are the people who are absolutely the least likely to come to meetings or fill out postcards. You know, so if we're just looking at the results from the people who have reached to us, that's actually missing the people in Bristol that have the biggest need.
So it seems like somebody should have the demographics of the population, like First of Addison County down to Bristol.
Yeah, they just readily.
It's readily available. I mean, the Census Bureau has all that data.
And
Well,
the
let's
Regional
just
Planning
look
Commission.
at that briefly about, you know, elderly versus children versus
Well, Chris
families.
has some objections to that.
Yeah,
I-
I see that coming.
I really want, I think we're getting into the weeds way before we need to. I would rather take this as at a broad level first. I mean, I look at things like when it comes to affecting the most people. Honestly, childcare, that's a great one I can throw out there. On the surface, I don't have any, it doesn't benefit me at all. My kid's often living in another state. But the reality is, I know by having good quality childcare in our town, it also opens up employment opportunities in my community. So there is a broader, so I think if we pigeonhole these ideas too early, we forget what the periphery bonus is outside. And I'd like this group to be able to think sort of in that expanded spectrum when we talk about these ideas. It's like, oh, you're right, it may not, like, again, the senior thing, I think it's a phenomenal thing is now we're keeping folks in our community. They want to live in our community. It doesn't help me directly. It really doesn't. In fact, it's going to add traffic to my street. I don't really want that, but I can support the project. So so that's sort of why I'm afraid of getting into the weeds of the demographics too early. Maybe as we get down and we come up, let's say we get 15 choices. Then we can maybe put those choices in smaller boxes to use that criteria to narrow it down to a tighter group if we have to.
And I think that what I'm taking away from this conversation, because by the way, I'm taking notes today, is that, you know, we have this thing that we've put out there a couple of times over the last couple of months about serving the broadest number of residents. So I'm just adding some nuance to those notes. Like maybe we also want to consider the more needy residents or the more disenfranchised or impacted by COVID. Maybe we also want to look at some of our demographic groups and consider whether, you know, whatever we're choosing or recommending comes up with a balance to affect some of those demographics. So I agree with you, Chris, that we don't need to make these decisions now, but I think these are really good ideas that we want to start capturing and thinking. And one of the reasons that, you know, we wanted to take our time in making recommendations to the select board is that we wanted to be able to manipulate and engage with this material and see what the ideas are. So I don't feel like we need to come out of October with a decision at all. I feel like we're going to start looking at this October 3rd, and Jessica's going to tell us, you know, if they run into problems with the data entry or, you know, if they're even able to get it all done by October 3rd, you know.
Handwriting is going to be a challenge, Jessica.
Yeah. And then we'll, you know, we'll see what we have there. And then our next step then is to decide how we want to, you know, evaluate and layer. Do we want to, you know, maybe we'll all come into that October 3rd one, looking at the data and being like, here's our short list and we're ready to go. Maybe we're gonna say, no, let's apply some rankings to the whole list and see if we have, I don't know, but I don't feel like we have to know that yet. I think we can sort of move organically this way, but this chart just sort of shows us the other two considerations that we might put on is, some of the things that we were feeling. And then also, if we want to, and we don't even have to, do we want to layer onto it to what degree we think it actually falls into ARPA eligibility in general terms or in actual specific criteria. But we don't have to decide that now.
So my question before we got onto that one, one thing I gotta say, I don't know if anyone else has done it. I haven't done it yet. How do I submit my own? Should I just follow the same? Should I hop online and submit? I was just wondering, I haven't done that yet.
Oh,
And
well, you've got
members
till
really
Sunday.
should, if you haven't.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I'm reaching out to, because I don't want it to all of a sudden, like, too much, and I go like, oh, I meant to tell you this.
Well, what about that?
And I just wanted to ask as a group to all be on the same page.
Yeah.
If you want to submit ideas, let's do it
By
online,
Sunday.
By
paper,
Sunday.
drop them off in my office, whatever it takes.
So I like sort of this sort of rough plan and I think the elements of how we're refining it makes sense. For me, I think I want to come back to this idea of how we get from kind of that second column to the third column. Because I'm envisioning Jessica's students doing this remarkable job, and then we have 600 lines in Excel sheet that are coded, yes, into broad categories, but nevertheless run into the really valid point of some being discrete proposal ideas and others being broad issues that we face. And it doesn't feel like we can actually apply those last two columns equally to those disparate kinds of ideas. And so I don't know if it's something that we think about at October 3rd, or we think about in conjunction with Jessica and her students along the way. But I do think that there has to be a way that we can go from the big to the small before we can begin to effectively do the
Well, I think
second half.
through the Excel process, when they're grouped,
But even still, I mean, if I have 100 lines or 80 lines of affordable housing, and some of them are just, we need to have affordable housing, and 8 of them are maybe a discrete plan, right? There's very different ways of evaluating the abstract versus the concrete. And so we have to have a way that we can take the housing group, which I agree is a really important first step, which I like very much about this, and say, once we've sorted the housing ideas, how do we distill the essence of what's being told to us about housing into either the handful of proposals that we think are important to go forward, or the handful of ideas that are sort of coalescing that we can then condense instead of having 12s that say affordable housing in various forms. This is the essence of what's needed, right? So that we can then evaluate the overall idea rather than 12 sub ideas is my concern.
Yeah, and that goes back to back when I said earlier, where I think after we have them grouped, we can then look at whether it's one-on-one or as a group, and be like, go through the housing. It's like, that's concept, that's project, that's concept, that's concept, that's concept, that's project. And then that would be one more filter. And then I think you're right. From there, we easily jump to column 3 here. There's almost like an intermediate.
And we could potentially do that collectively at a meeting. I don't know how much time.
I want to hear what Betsy
Yeah,
has to
I
say.
just wondered if Jessica's students
Yeah.
could do that the way I did, and just say, okay, affordable housing, spot, 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 spot. That's how many people said affordable housing. And then it doesn't, then our eyes can look
That's
at
right.
that line once and say, okay, 8 people. And then you move on. You don't have to see that word threaded in between each other one. So I think in a number of these things that if it's made very clear how many people, and I would do it in a visual rather than a number. I would do it like I did with the spot, so that you just scan it
Yeah.
quickly with your
I
eye.
would
and
put a
see
number.
if it's big, and you can compare it. to the other
16
numbers.
people have said child.
And again, playing with Excel, that's easy to manipulate that data to generate that kind of information.
Yeah, I agree with
It's Excel
everybody.
101.
On the one hand, I absolutely want to see it all spelled out. I want to see all 600 lines because I want to see how people worded it. I also want to caution us that this is not a popularity contest. And I can tell you for a fact that I was standing in the library when I heard 2 kids talking about swimming pools. And they both wrote swimming pools down right then and there, and then went and got their big sister and she wrote it down too. So, the fact that there were 3 outdoor swimming pools in the box at the library on that Thursday afternoon was a function of people being like, oh, let's all write it down, which doesn't necessarily mean that it is as grave a desired resource, as what might otherwise appear.
And I saw that a lot because I collected the comments here in the town box. And there's days I pick up, like just the other day, there was like 3 entries for bus for the hub.
Right.
I'm like, you can't tell me that.
They weren't standing there talking.
Yeah,
about it.
because it would be different. They arbitrarily came in throughout the months.
Right, right.
They all were in the box at the exact same time.
And that's fine.
Same handwriting.
It's totally fine, but I wouldn't want us to feel like we got swayed because of something like that. I want to see it. And then, but I agree.
Then
So
digest it.
exactly. And maybe, and Jessica, we can talk about this as it goes along, but, maybe if the data entry proceeds in a timely manner and you have time, maybe it's easy to print out the whole thing or to have access and then to have another, part of the spreadsheet, which is a more condensed version that might be easier to see and manipulate and work with. And we can play with it there so that, because I do think to your point, Chris, about the like concept idea, I think the ratio is solid 20-1.
Yeah.
There's
Concept.
a lot more concept than actual ideas.
Which is
Well,
fine.
except
Which is
We
fine.
asked for ideas. We didn't say, tell me how you're going to carry
Nope,
that out.
and that's exactly what
Because
we
then
want.
they wouldn't have written anything.
Exactly, because we were talking to the public, and I think the people who have very refined requests did already submit that. So it's good.
And the other piece is, I'd like to sort of stay focused on the first 2 columns, like Jessica's group did their magic first,
Exactly.
and let's see the data.
Yeah.
Because I think once we see it, then we can look at really what our next step is with it. Because we may all look at it and go, oh, that's obvious. Yeah, we can move right to column 3 or 4, or we go, oh dear God, it's so chaotic. We do need to refine it down. So I feel very comfortable with just letting her group and what they do. That's what Jessica's teaching them how to do. Let them practice what they preach for us.
So Jessica, all the data will be entered so that we can discuss it on October 3rd?
Right. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put it all in the Excel sheet. So you'll have one Excel sheet, with all the data there. And then what I could do, if it would be useful, is I could pull out each code, like housing, childcare, and do a sheet with just those suggestions, if that would be easier for people to read.
Thank you. And Jessica, what is the best way for us to get this all to
That
you?
was my next question. Since I'm sitting on a lot.
So if the data is in some sort of electronic form, you can just email it to me or send me a link in, Google Drive or however it's stored. What about the postcards though? Those are in hard copy, right?
Yeah. Who here has postcards in their possession? Anyone?
I brought
I have a
mine.
few at home.
Yep. So all the ones basically are in. So Jessica, I have all those physically in my office here. I don't know if Allison picked up the ones from the church or not. That might be the only outstanding
Oh, I
ones to
forgot there
gather.
were some of the church,
So that might be the only ones left to gather.
I'll email her.
But again, if we have those 2, if I'm in the office, would
Wednesday.
Friday be too late to get that to you?
No, that would be fine.
You mind swinging into the office down here and picking them up? Because I have no idea where you live. I mean, I could search it and find it. But I have
No, that's fine. I could stop.
Stop here.
What time are you in the office on Friday?
It's 10:30 to 4. The office itself is closed, so I just need you to call me. I'll send you my contact info on that. How's
Okay.
that?
Sounds good.
I have one question about
Can you
when
just
it's,
email Allison
when it's
and ask her
entered,
to pick up the church?
like what size font
But
is
just
it
to you
in?
before Thursday night.
Like how easy is it gonna be to read it?
So
Right.
I
Did you-
usually
there's
just
that-
put it in 12-point font. But what you can do when you're viewing it is just change that. So under font where it has the number, you can change that to anything you want. So if you want to view it in a different font, or if you just want to make it larger, like usually I click on there's on the very top where there are all the different menu options. If you click on view, it has a zoom, with a little
Okay, this is.
I'll help you, Betsy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I will
I'm
gladly-
with someone who has a program that will do it.
We'll do that together.
And I also
Yeah.
would like a written, I want it in writing also, so I can write on
Okay,
Yeah, so-
it.
Absolutely.
Print it off, it's printed off.
Yeah.
So if you look at, like, when I sent out the data from the website, I manipulated that so it was larger font, it was barred, it was easier to read. I worked really hard to make sure that it was very user friendly. I have a hard time just trying to read through a massive spreadsheet as well. So I totally understand where you're going with that, and I have no problems taking raw data and creating reports out of Excel
more
or
visual.
making it more visual for all
Yeah,
of us.
but like, we love paper, so.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, trust me, when I'm done, that's the other part. So I'm OCD about it has to fit in the printed margins. You can't have
Right.
spreadsheet that prints onto 2 pages. I have all sorts of weird issues like this.
Oh,
So
good.
I don't want to know anymore.
So Porter, are you envisioning that we're doing these independently prior to the October 3rd meeting? So each of us have some thoughts before? Or
I
are we
really, I
trying-
think it's probably pushing it, Jessica. I don't, so you can tell us when you think we'll have it in our hands. But to your point, like, no, I'm not expecting that everybody will have had time to fully digest it. So if they're able to get us all of the body of data entered by October 3rd,
We
I'll be thrilled.
Talk about it for the first
We
time.
can
on
talk
October
about
3rd.
it then.
So we
you
can
know.
kind of on the fly looking
Yeah.
through this
I
list.
mean, honestly, Jessica, if you don't pick it up, I know you have other stuff to data enter between now and then, but that's a lot of stuff. So you tell us what you think is possible, but that's what I'm hoping is that we have it to look at, work with, and play with starting on the 3rd. If we get it beforehand, terrific, but by the 3rd is terrific.
And Jessica, I drive by your house going in and out of Bristol, so I can drop it off at your house.
Okay,
On
whatever.
Wednes- On Wednesday. I
That
think
sounds good.
The sooner you get it, the better.
Yes, I will be here
Okay.
on Wednesday working from home.
So the one
great.
small step with that is the church data won't be here till Friday.
Oh.
So
So
that's,
she
do it
can get
Friday.
started with the other.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I'll email out all the stuff from the website. That's just a CSV file that comes off the web. And I'll email that out to you Wednesday when I'm back in the office.
And I'll send you a link to the matrix.
Sounds
And then-
great. And once I start entering that, I'll have a better sense about how long it takes. And then, I can give you an estimate for when it'll be ready, but I'm aiming for, October 2nd so that you have it for your meeting.
That's a little less than 2 weeks. One full week plus
Yeah.
the rest of this one.
Most of our data sets are thousands of observations, so we're used to it.
This is awful.
Happy to be small. Good. All right. Other questions or thoughts about the coding and categorizing? That was really our main thing for tonight, but I just wanted to make sure we got that out there and then,
Are we good with this stuff?
yeah, we're done with that. And we're back to the agenda. Just tell me what's next.
Discuss process of evaluating ideas, consider relative merit of
Oh, yeah.
lump, split, combo, spending recommendations.
And I think we actually already did a little bit of the conversation about evaluating of ideas. So we'll talk more about that in the future, as we said, but that was that thing about, are we going to rank them? Do we do that individually? Or are we going to do that as a group with the ranking?
I'll be right back.
That's my phone.
So there's that for us. So we'll evaluate the ideas and then we'll come up with something that we're gonna then send back to the community for additional feedback. And they can, everybody's phone ringing.
I didn't know that was gonna be another step.
Yeah,
But
I
we
didn't
did,
know we were
We
gonna
did
do.
offer, we told people that we would come back to them and get their feedback.
in what,
Maybe you told them at the
We
dump.
We didn't tell them what, we just said some type of ranking or survey to, see what they thought.
But when we just publish
Interesting.
it on Front Porch Forum,
Maybe, I don't know, we can see. But one of the things that has come up a couple of times in the different forums is people asking us, well, are you gonna spend all of it on one big thing? Or are you gonna split it up? And so that I'm calling this the lump versus the split.
got it.
And I don't think we need to decide that right now. But I just wanted to put that out there and have people be thinking about that a little bit because that's definitely a question that has come up several times in different, settings is, well, where are you gonna spend all of it in one place or break it up? And I think that there can be great arguments in both directions, but I just wanted to make sure that the committee members were all thinking about that.
Absolutely.
Okay,
You just come in the room.
I'm listening the whole time.
We probably already all have opinions about
I mean, and honestly, I think breaking up is great, but at the same time, I mean, if there's a big project, we all go, that's it. I mean,
that. Well, I can tell you right now, I'm not putting a sidewalk on Pine Street.
okay, fair enough.
And people actually said those words.
Right, I'm not building for you, though.
My goodness.
So it's much easier what you're not doing than what you are doing.
Yeah.
it actually is almost easier to cross stuff off than to get into the minutia, but you really.
I remember that with the fire station siting committee to be like, no,
Nope. There, okay, now are you?
What's
good?
left?
yeah. So anyway.
Cool.
All right, what's next on the agenda? Did we cover
Nothing.
everything that's on the
Anything else, it says.
spending, yeah, okay, yeah, we did, but I think we did.
Next
spend
meeting,
part of that time.
We do need to know,
Yes, so we did already set 2 meetings in October.
okay?
Um,
October 3rd is obviously one,
yep, and then I believe the 17th, is that 2 weeks later?
Yes.
and they're both here at 7 PM,
I would do it the same way we're doing it now.
Yeah.
okay?
I'm so happy to be in person, even though it was so yucky and rainy, I really didn't want to leave my house.
Yeah, but I hate Zoom stuff.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see people.
And I especially think that when we're looking at a whole bunch
Yeah.
of data,
It'll be
that
helpful
to
to
be
do
able to
that.
have papers and pass around as well as have it on the screen.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be helpful, so.
Well, also, I mean, somebody might say, what is this supposed to mean?
Right.
And it's good to be able to
Exploration.
ask the group and get somebody who's got some background on it.
So, anything else?
I just have one quick question for Jessica on the data. On Wednesday, when I pull the stuff off the website, the way it exports it out a little bit sometimes can be wonky. Do you want to chat on Wednesday maybe? And we just discuss where some of the idiosyncrasies I've noticed as I try to pull it out?
Okay, sounds good.
Is there, when people put spaces and periods and commas in their statements and then it tries to comma delimit it?
Oh,
Yay!
right. Okay,
Okay. But yeah, there's some of that stuff and we can just touch base on that.
okay. Sounds good.
You want me to email you when I get in the office and then I'll wait for your response and we'll go from there?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Sounds great.
Thank you, Jessica. and
Yes.
all of your students.
Yes,
So happy. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we are so grateful.
Because this lady-
it will be a
I'm
good
not sure that I would've-
experience for them too.
Good. I'm not sure I would have felt as confident going out to the community and glibly handing out postcards with Vanda if I thought that we were gonna have to actually enter that all ourselves. All right, anything else?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Chris, Helen, and we're off.
Have a great night all. Thank you.
Yep.